Welcome to the February 11th, 2019 meeting of the Northfield Selectboard. I call the meeting to order. Matt, would you like to come down and talk with us?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for getting me here. Northfield is just about to begin participating in a interlibrary community read where we're trying to get everybody in 10 local towns to participate in reading this book, The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit. It is indeed extraordinary. It's taking place, the conversations are taking place in March and April. The books will become available this week at the library and in boxes like this around town, including right here at Town Hall. You'll see posters like this around town, encouraging you to read the book, tell your neighbors to read the book. From these boxes, you can pick up a book just for free, give it to a friend after you're done, and or get a book at the library. Check it out.
That's pretty cool.
Thanks. There are all sorts of cool events, including at the library alone, altogether through the 10 towns, there are over 30 events. And at Northfield alone, we're having someone come talk about how to make a shelter, the way the gentleman in the book did. Talking about the world's worst weather at the Mount Washington Observatory, and talking about through hiking on the Appalachian Trail, and a book discussion at Cameron's Winery.
Sounds great.
Thanks. I hope you can spread the word.
When's the discussion at Cameron's?
April 16.
Okay.
No, excuse me, April 11.
Okay.
What promoted the interest in this community read?
The first time I read the book, thought it had a huge, broad appeal. It's about this gentleman who disappears into the woods of Maine and ends up camping out for 27 years. He makes a shelter of his own. He's out there through all seasons. He didn't see anyone or talk to anyone in all that time. And we have a fair number of outdoor lovers, and people seem very connected to both history and the outdoors in Northfield. And another library was looking at doing an interlibrary community read, and I convinced them to do this one.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I hope you can join us.
Yeah, I think I will. So those will be downstairs somewhere in the hallway or something?
Yeah, also at MIMS, at Kidder's, at the elementary school, at the winery, at the local high school.
And who is the author of the book?
Michael Finkel.
Michael Finkel.
A gentleman who's also amazing in his own right. His identity was stolen by a murderer, and he wrote a book about that, also turned into a movie, True Story it's called. James Franco, Jonah Hill, some big names. He's a fascinating guy. He lives in France, so he's not going to be visiting us, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's exciting.
Good.
Jerry, come on up. Thank you for being patient and coming back so many months later.
Well, I figured we'd at least give the town time enough to find an administrator. There's a couple of issues, okay, in addition, okay, to just, okay, the proposed policy changes. They were brought up last year. I just want to call your attention to them. One of them is the renewal of the franchise.
The cable
We got a 6-month warning, okay, we're already almost 4 months past it. It came out in October. Okay. The real question is, do we do what we did, okay, 7 years ago, okay, and join with Bernardston, do a joint negotiation with them. The contracts between the two towns are exactly the same, with just the boilerplate changed. Saves money, split the money, it costs 2 ways. The other one is the yes, a municipal lighting plant department. It was originally created, okay, to facilitate joining Wired West, created an entity. Wired West is defunct as far as I know. The department head for the lighting department resigned last year. So I think and he recommended that the board simply vote to dissolve, okay, the department. It's just clean up stuff.
Is that something that has to happen at town meeting? Do you know?
The town meeting voted to create it. That's the only guidance we've got. So if you like, I have a motion.
Sure.
I think we may need a town meeting vote on that.
To dissolve it? I think we may as well.
The town meeting?
Yeah, why don't we leave it with Andrea for now? She
Okay.
can research whether
Yeah.
it's necessary.
It's created by town meeting, it probably has to be dissolved by town meeting.
I mean, enough for everybody.
Oh, sure, I'll take it.
Didn't make you two one, I made one take number four. I should have known where it really needed to go.
So any motions good for that?
Great, thank you. And if we need to do it, if we can do it at this level, then we'll put it on a future agenda. Otherwise, we'll put it on town meeting.
It needs to be done.
So you said, well, you have the opportunity to save money by having the two towns merged together?
Yes.
And will that also prevent any confusion or miscommunication? Because there's going to be more people talking to each other.
This is just about the cable contract you're talking about sharing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Normally, okay, and what was done last time, okay, a separate committee was set up with members from both towns, okay, and they conducted a negotiation, okay, with Comcast. And once they had drafted a contract, if they agreed with it, then it goes back to the boards, be approved. There was, I'm not sure last time, but there was the opportunity to have public hearings to discuss. There's also the quick and easy way is ask them to propose, look at it, you know, assess whether are there changes that need to be made or we don't want to make. My own feeling is that now that they've finished running the cable down my street, we probably, I haven't heard any complaints, certainly not, okay, at the 11 meetings we had last year, there weren't any issues raised, okay, about the Comcast. But certainly we should let the community know that the opportunity exists at some time, but whether there need to be actual formal hearings or, you know, invite people to respond to somebody, we can.
Usually,
that would be the committee that normally does it.
The biggest thing to negotiate is what will they do as a build out, because usually when you sign a new contract you can get them to throw something in if it's available and possible.
Yeah.
And the density, if you can try to get them always to lower that density, that they might be able to reach more neighborhoods under the contract. I haven't read Northfield, so I'm not sure what the density is, but many communities have negotiated lower and lower, so you want to find the lowest one you can and force them to at least meet whatever other.
What that is, they just finished, okay, expanding, okay, the coverage and network to meet the state standard of what, 96, something like that, and they beat that. There are still some people who can't get to the cable. Those are the ones that involve with running the cable underneath railroad tracks and that stuff that can get very expensive. But yeah, those are the kind of issues that need to get discussed. How far we push them, okay?
Do you have a current map of cable, of where the cable goes?
Yes. I know. I helped them draw it because it was wrong the one they first presented. They showed cable coverage where there wasn't any.
That was pretty common in a lot of towns.
Yeah.
So we have 2 more months until what deadline? What happens?
After 6 months, the practical guide to doing that.
The contract expires in 2021.
Yes, yep. And they give you 3 years.
Provides
To negotiate
for
the
a
renewal.
formal renewal process. Determine your community's related needs. So between 30 and 36 months out is when you want to start your renewal.
So we're already 1 year into the 3.
10
This will be the
October
offer.
2021.
No, okay, we're only a few months in. Okay.
Ask those hard questions.
Do you know who the Bernardston Cable Committee is?
I don't know. I don't believe that they have an advisory committee like Northfield has.
I can't remember who, I was town administrator last time we did it, and I can't remember who was on it from Bernardston. Now, Otis was the BNC TV, he's the employee.
Well, it seems like we've been being served well as a two-community network.
Within 6 months of submission of this letter, the town conducts an assessment proceeding which affords the residents the opportunity to identify the future cable television needs at your request or on our own. Comcast submits a renewal proposal with the draft cable television agreement. Within 4 months of the town's receipt of the Comcast proposal, the public is afforded adequate notice and opportunity.
Okay.
That's where the 6 months came from. I don't think anything special happens, but
Okay.
that's with the notice from Comcast. In fact, got that from the town. So we should have copies of that.
And we still have an advisory committee on our side, right?
Yes.
And
Well,
left, but is it just you?
You have a chairman and at least one member, I think.
Okay.
Well, I haven't been able to get a hold of Bruce Kahn. He's the secretary. I don't know if he's away for the winter or what, but I haven't heard. In fact, you haven't heard from him yet. No, he's the one that did not put in a piece of paper renew.
2 requests to hear from him, and I haven't heard anything, which is unusual.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. So there's 2 of us, but there used to be 4.
So we need to put out a plea for more members?
Yes, please.
And then will you schedule the first meeting? Do you need us to do anything to get you started?
No, I'll call a meeting as soon as we
Okay.
know who's on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Get together and do an organizational meeting, which means I probably won't get to not be chairman again.
All right, policies?
Policies. This document is more process than really belongs in a policy. But we included, okay, the process because it makes it easier to explain. Before we would integrate this into the town's personnel policy, okay, we'd have to go back through it and take much of the process out of it. Particularly in light of, think about simple things like being able to log on your computer with a fingerprint. Facial recognition is coming, okay. When that technology arrives in town, we won't need, okay, usernames and passwords. Well, you'll still need usernames, but you won't need passwords anymore. So we soften the policy to talk about unique identity and that sort of thing, okay. But this explains in the current time what would be considered fairly normal, okay, for networks. It's only the beginning. While it touches on the 3 big areas that the policy needs to cover, the user base, the infrastructure, and the data. There's elements of each in here. Some of them need to be pulled out, okay, and expanded a little bit or cleaned up. But this is the user base part of it. Is primarily focused on identifying who the users are, what they're doing, what software they're using, what computers are they using. I can't tell you for sure now, okay, how many computers Northfield owns. Certainly can't tell you where they all are.
And how old they are.
Or how old they are. That's part. So you talk about infrastructure. One of the examples is if you consider the lifespan in this day and age of a well-used desktop, okay, to be 5 years, and you've got 20 of them. The town should be buying 4 new ones every year. They do get old, and you do end up, and this came out when we discussed with Guardian about upgrading some of the software on them. Northfield has machines out there that have software on it that can't be upgraded anymore because the manufacturer no longer supports it. There's some old stuff out there. That is all part of. This will begin to get information enough so we can begin to address other issues. There may be, well, there certainly will be in implementing something like this, a cost. But this is fairly straightforward system administrator functions. I would say if they couldn't do this, okay, with 1 or 2 person days, okay, we need to find somebody else. Let's put it that way. It's fairly straightforward once it's well defined. Questions on it? Issues?
Do you have a Do you have a number of how much this will cost?
I don't. Until the first step I would take would be to go out and find as many of the users I could find. What are they doing? Okay, we do have a list of the infrastructure, okay, that they keep updated. So we have a whole list of 20 or so user accounts. We can also identify by looking at some of the numbers, okay, on the reports from Guardian, which ones are the servers and that kind of thing.
This one, you're talking about this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's all the 22.
22?
This is the email accounts, but it's pretty much like
Email accounts, yeah. I don't know if every one of those email accounts is necessarily, okay, on a separate machine.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, yeah. Probably wouldn't be. We do know there's unique software on some of them, okay, that has to be controlled, which raises license issues. How much pirate software are we running? Hopefully none, but we don't know. It's a lot. This is a good place to start finding out, because it puts us in contact with the people who do know what's being done, which is useful. There's also, interesting enough, there would be a cost associated, certainly, okay, with finding out what device is on the network. Okay, nobody knows what it is. But when they do their survey of the network, to do their periodic security updates and everything, there's something that replies to a ping. Are you there? Yes, I'm here. And they have no idea what it is.
Okay.
That in discussions with Guardian, they would probably have to come out and actually look at ports on the server and, okay, where's the other end of that wire and what's attached to it, that kind of thing.
Okay.
That would probably cost more than setting this up.
Yep.
To get somebody to come out and actually investigate the network and find out what that thing is. But I haven't tried to get prices from them. They don't, Guardian doesn't readily do estimates. They like you to put in tickets, and then they'll bill you by the hour for the work they do on the ticket. They're not really, that's would be one of the things that I would request very early of Guardian. Okay, is I want a technical contact I can talk to.
Yeah.
Okay, and I believe I could probably Guardian into doing that.
So when I was reading this, this afternoon, I had a conversation with Andrea about some possibilities for the future in terms of looking at like a single server that would then talk to units in people's offices that didn't necessarily have a computer with them. So I just hope that as your committee keeps meeting, you'll talk to her too and see what ideas can be incorporated.
Yeah, I'd love to actually have a meeting with you, because I have some ideas about Guardian structure, having worked in several others. I did okay them to do a $500 security audit.
You did okay. Okay.
I did okay an audit for that security, because I want to see what they say, where they're seeing the weaknesses, and that seemed like a very reasonable price that we could afford. So that was the first thing to get back from them, is to see what they have. I did request quite a few documents from them. I have like a 187-page report that spells out a lot about what we have. I do have a list that tells us all the computers and the age of the computers, the years on them. At least it's what they seem to know, which I think is pretty much what they're responding
See,
to the best.
she's already done half the stuff we were talking about.
But I would like to meet with you, because
Absolutely.
I think that there's some things about the way they're structured that we need to talk to them about. I've met with them. They came out, and so we had some conversations. We do have some, issues around Windows 7 and Windows 10. And I did notice that there's several requests in for brand new computers, and I'm not completely convinced that the server/independent standing computer model that we have is actually the best and cheapest and most secure and safest backup-wise system going. So that's why I was sort of meeting with them to talk, and I've actually reached out to some other people to see if I can get some ideas. And so it'd be great.
I'd love
great to meet with you.
At your convenience. I'm retired. I sit there and I work on my model railroad and watch the trains go by.
Which will be a lot
the real
less annoying than probably doing this. A lot more relaxing.
I did this kind of stuff for a long, long time.
In terms of the policy, because I was looking at it, there's only one concern I have. I think I've done a little bit of research on policy in terms of especially passwords, because passwords is such an issue for people. So setting up unique things for passwords is always a safe thing. You're setting them that it has to be this and that. You're trying to force people to not choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's always a good thing. Because as they say, that they're kind of the first line of defense, passwords.
Yes.
The changing it every 90 days concerns me. Well, the new standards that have come out in the last several years, so that's just doesn't make anything any safer. Because what happens is people stick it to their computer,
Right.
Yep.
and then it's useless. But even more importantly, many of those turnover policies were because computers used to be attacked by sort of a brute force hacking, where they were trying to crack your passwords. Hackers have gotten way more sophisticated.
Yes.
They're doing all those phishing attacks where you actually give them information, or they get hooked on your computer and they're doing keystrokes. So password security becomes useless at that point, because you're essentially giving them your passwords and your key-ins. So changing it every 90 days, I'm not sure makes the town a whole lot more secure, and certainly frustrates the heck out of employees who ultimately do what most of us do and rehash passwords, or change 1 or 2 things to get it through.
Yes.
So the 90-day thing, other than that, the idea of telling people you have to have this many characters and this and that, I think most people like to set those standards so that you don't do the obvious. But I'm a little concerned with the 90 days. Most places I've gone, including my bank, they've all dropped that. They don't make you change your password all that often anymore, because it's just not. It's just not saving you.
Interestingly enough, that was another concern with that. Was raised at the committee meeting. That line has been both in and out of the draft twice. That, as she said, in modern day and age, it doesn't do anything. It does have the psychological benefit of reminding users that what they're doing is unique to them, that they're uniquely responsible, they're the ones with the password, so outside of that it does nothing. The other thing is, of course, is that every time somebody forgets a password and Sandy calls Guardian to correct the password, that's money.
There isn't a simple reset my password button somewhere?
No. And there's issues around security when you set those up. So they don't like to do it easily, because people can get into your reset your password, they can hack in, and all of a sudden they're resetting passwords and you're out.
Right.
And they're in.
Yep.
So that becomes a whole nother place. So I don't know if you have any interest. I have the National Institute of Standards and Technology from the US Department of Commerce, their guidelines on setting passwords. Which is where I drew much of this information. It's an interesting read. It's very brief, and it is actually quite interesting to me. They talked about this thing. One they talked about is really the hacking now is all these phishing and keystroke things to get in there.
And it's unlikely that Northfield's computer system, is going to be hacked. You can, depending, some
we've had
probably
some small
have
ones
been.
hacked.
Yeah, but there are a lot of security steps you can take, and every step you take, is more money.
Right.
I worked at, last part of my career was at Pfizer, and I could log on to my home computer, log on to my work computer from home, which was wonderful, But I found out, that my ability to do that, cost the company over $1,000 a year.
But those have become very sophisticated.
That kind of stuff.
Doing VPNs,
very sophisticated, yeah.
You're not doing log me in anymore, which is a terribly backdoor way to get into things, because that opens a hole. Anyone can have that. But VPNs, which are virtual private networks, are almost unhackable now.
Almost.
Well, nothing in the sense it's unhackable, but generally speaking, they don't hack your VPN. They get in with your VPN through you.
Yes, yeah. They don't get into the server directly. They get in through a user.
Right, but the server, you still have to get through quite a few protocols to do it. I've worked on VPNs, and it's a nice way for people to be able to work from home, and it's as safe as being at work almost.
Yeah.
So, but
that would require, and that was, by the way, that would be one of the discussions to have, because certainly it would be very convenient for people that use it a lot to be able to use it without having to go to a computer here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
a little cost-benefit analysis.
cheap,
How
yeah.
much we pay Guardian to make it secure versus how much we pay
Well,
ransomware to get
what
it
they'd
back.
have to do is they'd have to install another server here
Mm-hmm.
to act as, that's what you go to, and it's what decides, okay, if you get any further. Instead of actually wide open. We do know that there's some software, okay, on some machines, I've heard at least, okay, that literally ignores this, that actually comes onto the network inside the firewall.
Yes.
Any virus you've got on your machine is on the network, or could be, depending on how it's written.
So I'm hoping maybe that some of the analysis of this security audit will identify.
We'll show some of that. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Awesome.
Real interesting to see what they come up with. They proposed that, okay, early on, okay, and the only reason we didn't recommend it at the time is because we wanted to do this kind of stuff. At least nice to know who's using it and what they're doing with it, and then say, all right, now where are the holes in it? But if you've already done that, that's good.
So yeah, I don't know when we'll
Progress.
get that report, but it probably shouldn't be too long.
Yeah.
My comment on the policy was most places where it says select board, I'd be happy to say town administrator, that you can assign user accounts. I don't, we don't need to be involved at that level.
There's a difference between responsibility and authority. You can authorize the town administrator to do it all,
True.
okay, but you can't delegate responsibility. You own it.
I do want to keep
Someone
in,
runs it all in the end.
I definitely want to keep the select board in charge of who gets to access other people's emails. I do want that to run by us.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
That's where we
that's
started.
that's where we started this. Okay,
Yep.
is how does that happen? Now, if both people agree,
Right?
well, you don't need a select board. Sure, yeah.
Right.
Give them all mine. I don't care.
11 years of Buckland, I never accessed anybody's emails. Never needed to.
Do you have any more questions, either of you? Thoughts?
No. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Sounds
Okay.
like you two will connect.
Yes. need
We
to
will
do
we
that.
will get together and plan a path forward.
Sure.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And do ask anybody that spells computer with a C and not a K if they'd like to join the committee.
Well, they can do K. We can train them.
Yeah. We're not picky.
Yeah, we can train them.
Do we have any citizen concerns out there? Okay. Then we'll get to the regular business. I move we approve the January 29th, 2019 payroll warrant, $34,677.63.
Second.
I'm going to go through the whole thing if you don't mind.
Oh,
do them
go
all at
right
once.
ahead.
January 29th vendor warrant of $119,998.95. The February 5th payroll warrant of $23,774.96, and February 5th vendor warrant of $63,048.82.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes from January 28th. I was not here, so I'll leave that to you two.
These look good to me. One thing in the meetings attended by other select board members under my section, I think you can scratch out community compact. I think that might have been part of the Gil Montague thing, which I didn't know what to call.
I have something. Under temporary animal control officer section, I would like to have it put that Meisner asked questions relevant to the ability for Northfield to act as an animal control agency. And that I was assured by our town administrator that they were.
So you asked questions regarding
Just if the animal control officer would be is trained and able to do the tasks of an animal control officer, and that equipment will eventually be installed in the Northfield cruiser, a dog kennel or something.
You got all that, Sandra?
I move we approve the January 28th minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention. We did not have any interim select board meetings since January 28th, I don't believe.
Well, except the joint meeting with the finance committee and
Right, that
select
was
board.
immediately following.
Right.
Thank you. Meetings attended by select board members?
I had a park committee meeting, a Gil Montague civic leaders, and a heart committee meeting.
Alex, anything?
Just the joint select board finance committee meeting.
I went to the MMA last time as well, and teacher negotiation meeting last week. And maybe a school committee meeting in the middle there, I'm not sure. Okay, district planning board vote form, Julia.
Okay, so one thing we discussed at the joint meeting with the finance committees and select boards from the 4 towns was the possibility of combining our district with Gil Montague, and this is coming out of the grant that the Gil Montague Civic Leaders got, which the Heart Committee kind of glommed onto that, and we got our own $25,000, but they had more money to do the study that included regionalizing our 2 districts. And so forming a planning committee, which would include a member of the school committee from each town, and 2 members appointed by the select boards of each town. That group would spend probably 2 years looking at the financial and educational impacts on combining our districts. So that would be a long process. I think Gil Montague isn't really quite ready to make it happen, but Leiden and Warwick have already voted to put members on that committee as soon as it's ready to come together. And I think our school committee is also not voting on it yet because they're overwhelmed with a lot of other things. So this is something that might be formed, within, well, I don't know, maybe by May, but we could vote on it tonight, probably not put any members on it quite yet, or we could push that down the road and vote on it later.
Do you know what the future of the Heart Committee is? What role they'll play?
The Heart Committee thinks that we dissolve at annual town meeting.
Okay.
So when, at the point, or maybe I'm saying that too presumptively, if we vote on the changes to the district agreement that the Heart Committee has been working on at annual town meeting, then the Heart Committee will dissolve at that point, we think.
Okay.
If that is not ready to be voted on yet, the Heart Committee will probably stick around and help the school committee hold hearings and publicize the changes. But I think the Heart Committee is operating under the understanding that we are ad hoc and not necessarily going to stick around.
Just thinking that we're getting multiple committees all attacking the same problem, so.
Right.
And well, with the same people
but this
on them.
One would have to include members from the Gil Montague district as well.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. At this point, are you thinking we should vote just an affirmative that this board be created and then we can later decide who'll be on it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think so. That is certainly how Warwick and Leiden have approached it. I think, I don't know, some people think maybe we should wait until the school committee votes and then says, yes, we should do it. So I'm fine with that too.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a strong opinion about that.
Any thoughts, Alex?
I hate to say this, but it's like now we have another board. We have so many of them. I wouldn't mind waiting on that a little bit, I think. Until,
wait and see what the school committee does, maybe?
Sure. Sandra, can we flag that for like April? To maybe remember to put it back on an agenda.
All right, do you want to keep going with the joint letter?
Sure. So we have a draft letter here, I believe put together by Lois, that addresses some of the discussions and decisions that were made at that same joint 4-town meeting last week. There was some frustration about the way the borrowing is going about. So the school committee is looking at a 10-year loan for the, now I have to remember, it's like $465,000.
For lunch?
No, for everything.
Okay.
Right. And that includes the lunch deficit, which we've already put $90,000 towards. So there, we discussed seeing if we could, each town could find enough money in our budget for this year to pay a second installment of the school deficit so that we could lower the total amount that was being borrowed and therefore not have to pay interest on that. We don't know yet if each finance committee from each town has money available to do that or not. And the other vote was to request that the loan be changed to a 5-year loan, also looking at smaller interest, and we're just finishing up paying a technology loan, and so if we were able to borrow the money in the same kind of way that the technology loan was, it would not change how the town is being billed.
We just have a level assessment.
We just have a level assessment. Okay. And so there's concern that if it instead is borrowed through the district, that would increase the operating cost kind of, and not ever go away.
Right, they'd be able to build on it.
So I think Lois is looking for us to support this letter to send, I believe, to the school committee. Other comments?
I think it makes sense. If I asked Lois if we would have to defer any capital improvements to make this happen, and she said she didn't think so because the technology deficit would be coming off debt. And
I just want to know when they're going to make a decision on all this. I mean, it was a 3-hour meeting, and I felt like nothing really got accomplished besides the 5-year thing. I think people are just frustrated at this point. I was there. I sat next to somebody who just argued for 3 hours.
This is the joint meeting.
Yeah, and I didn't like it, but that's how meetings go sometimes.
Well, it's definitely tricky to get people together from 4 different towns with viewpoints of select boards and finance committees to see how to find agreement.
I just don't see if there. I don't think there's ever going to be an agreement on this whole school issue. I think it's just going to come down to this decision, and in the end, there's just going to be arguing anyways. It's cynical a little bit, but it's, I just think we're just prolonging this much longer than I think it should be. But it's a big decision, so hopefully one will be made soon.
In terms of asking them to cut it to a 5-year loan instead of a 10, does that sound good to you?
Well, yeah. And just which school they're going to close. I know that came up as well, and people were arguing with the commissioner guy that was there, who was very nice to come all the way out of his way to answer questions, and people were just being really mean to him. So it's just frustrating, the whole experience.
I move we support the letter proposed by the Finance Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And Tracy, will you send like that one editorial change to Lois, change
Yes.
the date of the meeting?
I have a couple other things I
I
want to change
would be
too.
actually writing.
You got it?
letter.
Okay,
Okay.
beautiful.
So just let me know what you want to change, and then,
Okay,
the January.
yeah. I had a couple of other things I
All
wanted
right,
to
well,
yeah.
I can get that from you.
just typos, that's all.
And I'll probably draft it as a joint letter, and so if it's all right that Tracy signs it, we could do the 2 chairs, and then we don't have to
Yep.
Get us
have all
all
the
together.
committees come out and do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, complete streets. We have a draft policy in here.
Right, so I sent you that, as well as kind of a little bit of a sheet that from the Regional Council of Governments, just kind of showing you what other towns, what
Yeah.
status they're in and what they've done and been able to do with it. I did bring it to Highway.
Good.
So Tom has seen it. Tom actually stopped in my office today and said he is fine with it.
Good.
So I think that you don't need to vote it today. This is really just your first look at it. So it's on an agenda. This becomes kind of your public review, that's posted.
First
and everything.
reading.
Right, and so the idea would be that, you look at it for your next meeting as to policy to pass. The purpose of the policy really is to ensure that the town is taking all users of roads and sidewalks into account where it's feasible whenever you're doing road or sidewalk or crosswalk design, any kind of construction. You don't have to do it on every road in town. You're not going to be putting sidewalks on your dirt roads. That's not what the policy is about. And they take into account smaller towns and different size and roads. You don't have to bring everything up to, bike lanes, sidewalk, That's not what it's about. You could be looking at crosswalks. You can be looking at, handicap, ramps. You can be it ranges all over the place. If you look at some of the grants that are in the first section, it shows you some of the ideas that people went on. And so it's basically just a promise that when you do a road, you will look at who uses the road, how can the road be used, and how is it best used for all possible users to the ability of the road. You don't have to make any promises. It doesn't cost the town anything. Nobody's going to say you can't do road work because you didn't put something in it. The state already does this, so if you're going to do something with state funds, they're already going to do this through whatever design, and they're going to ask you to, your designers already have to do it. You hire an engineering firm. They're already following this because it's already adopted at the state level.
Okay.
So this is just sort of a local idea. Once the state approves this policy, then the town can apply for 100% funding that hires a consultant, and you create the prioritization plan. And the prioritization plan is they come out and they work with a committee from town. You put that committee together, it's usually just a small group of people, including highway, and they just walk around and they look at all the roads, and you point it out, and they also identify where there's issues that could be addressed through state funding, whether that's crosswalks, bike lanes, sidewalks, missed connections, missing pieces of sidewalks, safety things, wherever they see that, because they know the rules and they have a big chart and they have a way of formulating this. And you just create a list of priorities that the town identifies, and you present that plan to the state. The consultant helps you price it. It's about this much to do this much, so you get a sense of what it would do. And then once you get that plan approved, which is another few months or so when the state gets it done, then you can apply for the Complete Streets funding and start picking things. You don't have to go in order necessarily. Start picking things off the list with funding that comes from the state. And again, that's the kind of projects that are identified in that paperwork. So it's really kind of a no-brainer to do a lot of the things that might be missing. Sometimes there's big projects and you didn't even realize it, and they come along and they say, oh, you could do this, and it's $100,000, and sometimes it's just little projects to make part of a street more accessible by fixing the ramp because it's not right, or fixing a crosswalk, or adding a crosswalk, or things like that. So the plan would come back before the board anyway, and you would adopt it. So nothing goes in place without you reviewing all the work that's done. And then you can go after funding to try and help make those roads complete.
Right.
That's the concept.
Well, this seems like a great idea. It seems like I think this will help people feel more like their street will matter a little bit more, because there's a lot of roads besides Gulf Road and Northfield that matter. And so if being a part of this might show other people that we do care about your road and not just the mountain road there, Gulf Road. So.
And the highway superintendent's most likely to be on it, plus other people. You can ask members of the public. Usually we ask someone from the senior community who may have, because they have limited mobility, residents, and all sorts of other communities in town to put someone on the committee, because they may have experienced things the rest of the people haven't experienced. While we're walking around, we don't see it or experience it, and we want to get that perspective into the plan.
People with kids, maybe.
Right. And they say, well, I've always tried to cross the street here and you don't have anything for this long, and everyone's cutting across the street, or this handicap ramp is terrible, it cuts on the corner, it's not wide enough, it's in the wrong space. We've had ones that go across into driveways and places. I mean, just, things that you don't think of but really aren't safe or accessible for everyone. So that's kind of the idea. And then they'll also look at the road. There may be places where they say it would be, you've got a ton of bikers through here. Maybe you put in a bike lane if you have the room. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do a shared bike lane part of the road, just with identifying markers to make it safe for that. So there's a ton of different things you don't necessarily think of, but they come in with that and they run it through. Like I said, there's a committee, so it's not just somebody imposing it on the town.
I think it's great.
Me too.
Yeah.
I had one question under implementation. It says implementation will be the responsibility of all departments. What does that mean?
Well, I think it means in the sense that it applies to them. If we come across something where we need a department to weigh in, then we're going to ask them to help participate. We're not going to pull together every department in town every time we want to do a project. It's individual to whether it's relevant.
Okay, that's good.
Any other questions at this point? And then we'll table it till next time. Okay. Thank you, Andrea. That's a pretty cool idea. New ambulance services lease, which is the next thing in our packet. And am I right, the only thing that's changed is the amount and time?
Correct, right. It's basically just starting at a new rate and going 3 years. So you're basically taking it up $100, and then it's going to continue on through. So you're going to take the 3-year lease, because they're 3-year leases, from the past 3 years of $22,500 for 3 years to $26,100, which is $3,600 or
Right.
$100 a month over.
I had no idea that building was owned by Sandry.
It was a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So wait, is this comma in the wrong place?
Oh, it's possible. I've read it several times, but that doesn't.
So that's the total over 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, that's 3
$700
years.
a
It's 26,100, but it's 3 years. It
Okay.
represents the entire term of the lease.
And so each of these $700 is for per month.
Right,
Right, okay.
right. And
Got
they're
it.
actually just 100 up, so
Yep, good
although,
question.
right, so it's $3,600 total that this 3-year lease would be over the last 3 years.
Okay.
And Mark knew these numbers when he built his budget, I think, right?
Oh yes, he's seen this. So
Okay.
it's been sitting around a while, but we just figured we would start the process of getting it out there. So at any time, I mean, it's up to you to decide when you guys are comfortable with it. It's, like I said, it doesn't change any of the things. I asked them if they'd had any problems, if there'd been any, with the current lease, would they want to change anything? I mean, but it doesn't start till July 1st, so there's no hurry to sign it. We just wanted to make sure that it was ready to go so that they don't end up.
What were they paying for rent there, the previous contract?
It's $100 a month cheaper. So the last year through this year would have been $650 that they're paying now till July 1st, till June 30th of this year. And now it'll jump to $750 and then go forward.
I don't see, the termination clause just says, upon the expiration or other termination, the landlord shall be entitled to immediate possession. It doesn't say how much warning we have to give them?
Yeah, I noticed that too, but it's usually terms of the lease. So if you're paying monthly, it's 30 days.
Okay. Hopefully someday we'll have a new public safety
So if you were,
complex.
right, so if you were paying in 6-month increments, it would be 6 months. If you were paying an
Okay.
annual cost, it would be an annual. But since you're paying monthly, it defaults to the term
Okay.
that you're paying.
So there's not a whole lot at stake.
No.
Okay.
Has Mark stressed how if working with Sandry between a landlord and a tenant relationship has been a positive one?
Yeah, I asked him specifically. I said, have you had any complaints? Are there any issues? Is there anything that should change in the lease as a result of being in the building? And he didn't feel so. So because it's a commercial lease, your landlord basically doesn't talk to you. Like, they basically say it's all on you. I'm responsible for like the roof and the walls and a commercial lease, and everything else is you.
Send the check in and you're good. All
That's
right.
pretty much what commercial landlords are all
Okay.
about. They don't responsible for much.
Good to know.
Do you see any harm in approving this tonight?
No, I mean,
Do you guys want to sit on it or approve it?
I'd be happy to approve it
Let's
tonight.
approve it, yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. I move we approve the commercial real estate lease for the EMS to continue renting from Sandry Realty.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Contract to purchase telecommunications easement and then the cell tower easement agreement.
right. So there's two things here. There's the contract, and then there's the actual easement agreement. The lawyer at this time is recommending that you sign the contract, get that out of the way. That means everybody's under contract, and they will send you your $10,000, and they can't get out of the contract, and that you do the easement agreement probably at your next meeting.
Okay.
She's pretty much settled it, and we pretty much know what those change in terms are going to be. And I can certainly fill you in on them. I probably should, just in case you have any question. But not signing it tonight just gives you a chance to react to that before you sign the big agreement, which is not the contract. So basically, the 4 things that are of note that she just wanted you to know of. She's not saying they're good or bad. They're just things you should be aware of. Is that you're agreeing to there's no additional towers that will be allowed on the entire 5-acre parcel. pretty standard. They don't want you to turn around and rent it to a competitor, you know, another part of your same property. But you would have to agree to that. And this is for life.
I was just going to ask how long this goes.
You're signing this for $150,000. You're basically giving them, now there's termination, but essentially you're giving them a permanent easement. It's an easement. An easement's like when you put it on a deed, it's
right.
forever, unless you remove the easement, which is illegal, another legal process. So there's no specific termination rights. In other words, it doesn't say you can terminate if we, you know, don't sweep the trash up or something,
okay.
except for remedies under law, which means you could go to court and terminate them for gross negligence, you know, other types of things that you would have legal remedy under law. But there's nothing in there that says you can terminate this because of this. You just have your legal remedies. No, they're not terminating the current lease because you do have a lease with them. They're going to create a new entity and they're going to roll that into the new entity. Not a big deal, but just you'll see another name at some point, and it's the same entity.
You've spent a lot of time on this, Andrea. Do you see anything with this that looks like they may have other intentions other than what's imposed in front of us?
No, I don't think so. I think that, you know, the attorney Shervin, who I've dealt with before for many years, she's pretty good. You know, she had some things she pushed for. They had some things they pushed for, and so we kind of jockeyed, you know, between what we didn't really feel strongly about and things we did feel strongly about, and you know, felt we were willing to give up. Most of it you had included a draft lease, and so these are really sort of the four things where we compromised slightly differently over the draft lease you gave them under the RFP. And so she just wanted you to be aware of them. But nothing struck anyone as a make or break kind of deal. Okay.
That's a lot of money.
Or out of the ordinary to such an extent that she would have said, absolutely no way, that's crazy. Yeah. The last thing that she felt a little bit about, but she has not seen, it's not that she hasn't seen it, they have a $15,000 removal bond, which she said, it's not the highest she's ever seen, but she said it also has it so that we had them add a provision that you could renegotiate that bond over time because the cost would get more expensive.
And this is to remove the tower?
Every 5 years, the town gets to say, okay, we want you to do, and they have to do this little analysis to show us that $15,000 is adequate to remove the tower. And if it's not, then we get to negotiate a higher price because, you know, 20 years from now, $15,000 may not take that tower down should they abandon it or whatever. Or you go to court and you win the right to take the tower down or whatever. That bond is supposed to be insurance to you that you don't have to pay for the cost of taking their tower down. So you want some provision in there that there's an escalation over time with the cost of inflation to actually remove that tower. So that was the last piece. They wanted a flat set 15 and we said, maybe not. And so we negotiated a little bit of a review every so often.
Is that going to be automatically triggered, or does the town have to remember to open it every 5 years?
Well, that will remain to be seen. I'm not sure it's in their interest to remind us, but it is a contract clause, so we'll have to try and keep our options open there and make sure that we tell them it's time to do the little analysis and make sure that 15,000 is still what everyone agrees is adequate. So those are really the four things that she felt you should just be aware of that were sort of negotiated as opposed to all the rest of the standard language.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm confused why we have two agreements. What's the difference between the two?
And I went through this with her too. The contract is actually the purchase of the easement. Okay. The second document is the easement. Okay. So you're going to give them the easement document that will be recorded as an easement. The first one is for them actually buying the easement from you. Okay. So they're going to pay you $10,000 for the contract, but then when you do the easement, they're going to pay you the $475,000. That's the value of the easement. Okay.
So one has to be signed pretty much before the other.
Yes, the contract pretty much has to be signed, and then at that point, then they will draft the final document that will be recorded as the easement.
Okay. Okay. So do you guys have any questions, problems with signing the contract tonight?
No.
Okay. I move we execute the contract to purchase telecommunications easement with SBA.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And do I have that here? I do. Oh, there were 2 stickers on this one. And then we'll table the easement agreement itself.
It's just kind of just reviewed, so.
Right.
Sign the second one, too?
No, we're
Is
not
it just
gonna sign.
another
Just
copy,
one.
or is that?
Actually, I made 2 signature pages so that we could send.
Send one to them
Send
and
them
keep
one.
one.
Send them an
Yes, so
original.
go ahead and sign that one. So the easement agreement itself, do you want us to sit on that for now?
Yes, yes. She
Get the
wants
contract done
contract
first.
to go in and get settled and receive their down payment on that before we officially sign the
Okay.
easement itself.
All right, so we'll table that until all that's taken care of. All right, the draft contract agreement for EMS with the town of Bernardston. I have already seen this, and I think my suggestions were already incorporated, so I will leave it to you two. Do you have any questions or thoughts?
I thought it looked quite good.
Yeah. And all the questions that I had asked, probably at least a month ago now, 2 months maybe, they were answered with confidence by Mark, and seems like a good idea. Looks
So the
good.
next step is to send it to the attorney. Just wanted you to have
Yep.
your final say before it went to the attorney, and then we'll get their comments back
Okay.
at that point.
Okay, sounds good. All right, rental agreement contract. Oh, this is the COGS thing.
Right, this is just, this is not, no expense, no binding, it's just allows the town to participate in this program where towns can borrow equipment from each other, and it just sort of sets the ground rules. It's kind of like a standard agreement. Signing it just means you could partake of it if you choose. Doesn't obligate you to rent anything, it doesn't obligate you to rent out anything.
Right.
It's all independent, so it just seemed like a thing to do in case all of a sudden something came up and we really found that we had either broken piece of equipment, lost piece of equipment, or needed a piece of equipment the town didn't have and another town might have, and we don't want to purchase it. It's a possibility to go on there and just be able to rent it. May never use it, may find it useful. It's hard to say. It's available.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
And were you able to talk to the highway department about that?
Yeah, there's no expense, there's
Right.
no obligations, so I don't.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to go ahead and sign it today.
You want to make that motion?
Yeah. I move we sign the rental equipment contract with the COG.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So it looks like there is room for all 3 of us. There's one. Chloe. Ah. You're somewhere.
I'll just sign it here.
Printed name or just
Oh, no, your signature.
Okay.
All right. Request from police chief to appoint Officer Alexander Barashkov to sergeant.
Not asking you to do that tonight, I only wanted to bring it so they are coming to the next meeting whereupon you could, talk about, resumes and specific qualifications and recommendation. I just wanted to put it on the agenda in case you had any questions you wanted me to look into in terms of looking at the job description or sergeant's positions in general, and I know that you guys can't discuss it unless it's in a public meeting, but in terms of getting into the actual appointment, you don't really need to do that tonight because, like I said, they will attend the next meeting, whereupon you will have them in front of you to discuss those particular things. I just didn't, if anything was to come up, I wanted you to have an opportunity to have those questions answered before they were sitting in front of you.
Any questions I have, I will be glad to ask Mr. Porozkov and Chief Layton myself.
That's fine. I just didn't know in terms of structure or the those formality pieces, not the actual applicant himself.
We've had a police sergeant position for quite a number of years and haven't had anyone in it for a little while.
Yeah. My only question, which I think Rob answered for me, but perhaps the other two would like to hear when he comes, is that the job description says you should have 5 years experience, which I know Alex does not have, so he should be prepared to talk about that.
He has to address that.
Yep.
That's one of his things that he will address. Because the job description has its own qualifications, but that's up to them to.
I've seen typically with police departments request that if someone is applying for the sergeant position to see anywhere from 3 to 5 years, and I don't even think Alex has a year of full-time experience, so I would like to see his reasons for justifying why he should have the sergeant's position.
Well, I'm sure that he'll be prepared to speak to that personally. I mean, I'm sure that that's on their agenda. It was just, I just wanted to make sure you understood, in case there were any questions about how that's structured. Not having, I mean, we just experienced it recently, and that may be what's making the chief propose this, is that, the chief out with a medical leave, with just having officers, you don't actually have a chain of command in which, so we had to put in an acting chief who had experience with payroll and bills and that kind of authoritarian structure that we didn't have because we only have officers. So that's may have spurred the consideration for putting in another tier in which somebody would be trained to act in that capacity if for any reason the chief's out. And this was anticipated, but if it's unanticipated, you would also have those questions. So that was, I think, my take. Wasn't spoken to on the chief, but my take and my reasoning as to why you would want to consider this. And speaking to them personally, and persons in the position, you'll have that opportunity at the next meeting.
Any other questions on that one?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Andrea, your update.
Well, you've got a lot of it because we went through a lot of things tonight, things that I've been working on. Also, I did have my department head meeting with the police since I did highway. And interestingly enough, since we have had just a couple of those, and I have spread the word, certainly we've done a lot of talking at town hall, and I think it's leaked to other departments. The regular people who work, I don't mean like the monthly stipended or on call, but who get regular weekly paychecks, about half have already signed up for direct deposit. So it was already, I think, a latent demand, and the treasurer collector has sent out the form in with the paychecks of people who maybe didn't even have the opportunity to do it, have that ability, and people who don't get a regular paycheck, get on call. She has put it on her page on the website, so they have the opportunity to access it there, or they can obviously stop in town hall. And we will be continuing to promote that, but it has seemed to be popular. And people should know they still get a stub, they still get their pay stub, they don't get nothing. And I think that people have been quite pleased with it. So we're moving forward with that. And you spoke to the Finance Committee letter, which was, I did actually want a little bit of an update. I did have a discussion with the superintendent today. We had a little phone call, and I think that I got the impression from him that they're somewhat amenable to the 5-year, and I suggested that maybe they should present a 5-year and 10-year financing option, even if they take the up to 10 years. Show what would happen if they paid it off in 5, how much the towns could save, and what that would look like, so that people understood why 5 might or might not be a better option. Because if they can do a prepay with no penalty, you could still do the 10 and prepay. Right. But you could actually see what you'd be saving in those last 5 years, which might be, but people really should see the numbers, because they really should know what 10 to 5 means,
Right.
because that might change their mind.
Right.
One tricky consideration that we mentioned at this other
Yeah.
meeting was if all 4 towns don't agree to prepay at the same
I don't think you
rate,
can do that.
it becomes
Right.
problematic.
That's why I think every town should see what their payment is going to be, because one or more towns might say that's more than we thought. And that number isn't just take it by 10 and pay double it, or, I mean, there's a, there needs to be a table that shows what that might do. And so I suggested that maybe that they should bring that out so that people could discuss it with all the numbers in front of them. Because in theory, it sounds great, save those 5 years of interest, but what does that mean on your principal payments up front for 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody seemed amenable to it,
Great.
that they would, hopefully they would do that. So yeah, I think that's
it?
pretty much what I've been working on here.
Besides the long list of things we already took care of.
And there'll be a few more at the next meeting.
Good.
trying to get some of these things updated and move some of these projects through. So yeah, I have met the wastewater superintendent as well. So she's been in. She seems great. She's very excited. She's very happy with the job. So I will probably be reaching out to her to get a tour of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
She says it will be brief.
It's not very big.
No, but it would
much
be
that
good
goes on there.
it would be good to get out there and just see the facility, and
Yeah.
she can show me, her ideas, and so I can understand kind of what she's doing day to day and her operation. So I'll be doing that.
Okay. Great. I don't have anything not reasonably anticipated. We don't have any correspondence.
We did get a note from Brian, the town administrator, Irving, saying that Mass DOT has approved the truck exclusion for Gulf
Yes.
Road, and now it has to go to Boston and
We're waiting for Boston.
do something else. But
Oh boy.
I'm sure Bill Kilpatrick is sitting on the edge of his seat waiting to
not
hear
here
that.
tonight.
Once Boston approves, then they will contact us about signage, what the necessary signage is at that time. But it's gone to Boston.
Thank you for remembering that.
That's great.
All right, we have one appointment. I move we appoint Alex Strisky to the Energy Committee, term expiring December 31st, 2019.
Second.
And I'm just hoping Alex might also be interested in the Conservation Commission at some point.
I'm sorry, I didn't, this is one sheet I did not look at.
Sure.
Interested in other boards and committees, but haven't had a chance to attend any other meetings. Energy Committee. Have any of you met him?
I did just this last week.
He's interested in exploring energy in Northfield?
Yeah, he works for MEPA, the Environmental Policy Act office in Boston, and he and his wife just moved here last year, and he's interested in doing stuff to help out with climate change.
Well, bless his heart. Let's sign him right up.
Does he have to commute to Boston every day?
Only some days.
We'll
it
keep
sounds
them in
like.
mind for the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Group too, which is coming your way soon. I thought I'd only hit you with one at a time.
Try not to overwhelm him.
It's a new one
But I
on the
think
line.
that's something that the, Energy Committee and the, these people may be interested in when we get into
Yep.
into that.
All right, all in favor of appointing Alex?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a few announcements. I have a weather announcement from the Board of Health. Due to pending inclement weather forecasted for Tuesday night into Wednesday, the transfer station will delay opening Wednesday until noon. I thought perhaps we should say something about the excise tax bill error that we got an email about.
Yes, in trying to do the right thing and change the due date to Monday the 4th because the due date fell on a day that she didn't work, the treasurer collector extended the date on her tax bills, and the total amount tax due in your first line, if you're looking down at the bottom, is correct. What she didn't notice is it added a few pennies of interest because it automatically assumed that if you went from the 1st to the 4th, there was interest. And so that very bottom line added, depending on your tax bill, a very small amount. So she's not looking for the interest.
Okay.
She's really looking for the total tax due. She was trying to do the right thing by give people a little more time, but unfortunately what she didn't notice is that the system automatically did that. So anybody with any questions should contact her. She has a full explanation on the website. She's not looking for anybody to pay the additional money, and if you're very concerned about it or you've paid more than you should, please contact her. she can help you take care of that.
All right, thank you. We are closing the warrant for town meeting on March 25th for the annual town meeting. So heads up, everyone. Sandra, I assume you're going to send out one of you will send out a memo to everybody. You usually do. And Julia, would you like to say something about Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to pass on our condolences to the family and friends of Peter Talmadge, who was a longtime volunteer on the Energy Committee, served with knowledge and enthusiasm, and just passed away this week. So we're sorry to hear that.
He was a bundle of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, be missed. Anything to propose for future agenda? All right, then I move we go in.
Sorry, one thing may want to say, they canceled the finance committee meeting for tomorrow night. Due to
Our
weather.
finance committee meeting?
Yeah.
And
Just
also,
to make sure.
yeah.
So people
that
didn't
doesn't
show
matter.
up tomorrow night for finance committee.
Okay.
I just remembered that.
Thank you.
That was canceled.
Okay. I move we enter into executive session under reason 3, not to return to open session. We'll adjourn from there.
Second.
Tracy says yes.
Julia says yes.
Alex says yes.